Binaural beat technology is used to assist meditators to enter into and hold expanded states of awareness. How does this work? What states are available to us? Hi, I'm Scott Taylor, and welcome to the Afterlife Files. Today's guest is Christopher Jordan. He is going to talk about the world of binaural beats, and we're going to dive deeply into that in a way that we can all understand. Let's think of it like tech talk for all of us. Chris composes instrumental music that incorporates binaural beats to achieve states that are described as smoothing, meditative, or otherworldly. As you listen to this interview, pay attention to three things. First, his description of binaural beats is both unique and descriptive. Second, I also appreciate his description of how binaural beats influence both the body and the brain. And third, throughout this interview, he also touches on a wide range of uses of which binaural beats are indicated. Enjoy our time together with Christopher Jordan. Hey, Chris, we're really glad to have you here on the Afterlife Files. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Scott. I greatly appreciate being here.
So, you're one of the guys in this world that's really big on binaural beats and using them for meditation. And some of my folks in the world who are watching my podcast aren't really that familiar with what binaural beats are and what they're used for. So give us a little primer, will you?
Sure thing. Binaural beats basically operate off the idea that your brain is ready to be entrained. It is a pattern machine. The prime example of entrainment and the physics concept of entrainment is if you take two pendulums and swing them opposite directions, they will eventually match up. And they may fall back out of sync eventually, but for a while, they'll match up. Your brain is ready to do the same thing. This is how pure tone frequency therapy works. It's also how binaural beats work. The difference between the two is pure tone frequency gives you a single tone to listen to, like, for instance, 7.83, which is the Schumann resonance. Of course, that is below the range of human hearing, so you'd be listening to an octave. But your body can feel, that's kind of the lower end of a cat purr. The part that you feel vibrating on top of you would be a good example of right at 8 hertz. So binaural beats operates off the principle of your brain will not only readily produce these, but will produce it on its own given the proper stimuli. So if you offset a frequency, let's say 8 hertz was your desired frequency, in one ear you would put 8.1, in the other ear you would put 7.9. That creates a wobble effect of hearing one, hearing the other, woo, 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 woo. And eventually your brain just goes, wait a minute. It sounds to me like you're trying to get to 8. Here you go. And starts producing it on its own. Really remarkable that your brain is elastically able to do so and more than ready to do so. There are numerous studies that have been done. I mean, a prime example, the whole way I got into this and found out about it to begin with, Scott, was studying subliminal psychology.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. And the idea of flash rates, frame rates, thank God that there are actually laws. I mean, these things were so effective that they put out laws that prevented them from putting drink Coke during let's go out to the lobby, because your brain will pick up on one frame out of 30. You may not consciously pick it up, but your brain will. Your brain will pick up on frequencies that are used in the background of things. So it's really interesting the way that our brains decode all kinds of information regularly and availably while we are processing stuff consciously.
So, what do you think that particular elasticity, that ability to create the beat, um, why did nature put that in us? Do we use it regularly?
I think that if anything, I mean, number one, yes, there was a fantastic study done here in the last couple of years that basically shows the brain is a huge organic transducer inside of a resonant chamber. So yeah, we are electric machines ready to pick up vibration. Even the idea, um, I regularly bring up the idea that go back to ninth grade science right now, despite our separation of space, doctor, we are sharing an electron shell. We are 90% empty space, which basically makes all of this an agreed upon illusion. Like it just starts breaking down in such a meta way that it's really remarkable, and it's more than interesting to see science proving these things regularly. Just this last year, quantum entanglement was all the rage and won the Nobel Peace Prize. The fact that one particle, despite distance, can influence another. This is the root of things like remote viewing, the root of things like being able to go on a near death experience and come back, being able to astrally project, stuff like that. Things that people have kind of set aside for years as quote parapsychology that are coming to be more and more actual and founded science.
So, Chris, what do these binaural beats do to our brain? And then how does that translate to what it does to our body?
Well, the easiest way to put it, if I can show you a graphic real quick, there's an example of brainwave frequencies that you know different parts of our brain are activated by different things. Different characteristics are activated by different stuff. So, like gamma waves are there while we're concentrating and focusing. Alpha waves are there while we're relaxed and sleepy. So, the idea is that much like lifting a weight at the gym repetitively over a certain amount of time will allow you to lift that amount of weight more rapidly, your brain can do the same thing. Same thing as learning multiplication tables and getting to where mathematics is an instinctual thing that you no longer have to use fingers or a calculator for, you know? So yeah, we and in that aspect, even in the aspect of being a transducer, we once again uh we see and hear a very, very small slice of the electromagnetic spectrum within a few hundred nanometers, like less than 500 nanometers is the space of human hearing as well as visible light. So all of these other waves and electromagnetic frequencies absolutely make a difference on the vibration harmonically around them. No different than a guitar string vibrating the ones around it.
So, these binaural beats that are vibrating, um, you use them to have experiences of the non physical universe. How does that work?
So basically, it's the idea that when you're in states of, let's say, deep meditation, if you're in a state of REM sleep, you'd be looking at things like theta waves, which are down toward the rare earth frequency, 4 to 7, 4 to 8 hertz. And yeah, when you start looking at that, uh, think about a native drum beat, that they use in ceremony, things like that. It is right up around the same pulse rate, you know. Uh it's not like a crazy rock and roll drum beat. It's very slow and rhythmic and there to entrain your brain and start actively peaking those other frequencies that are there that produce these things automatically. It's same thing as when we're in REM sleep. We don't spend the entire night of sleep in REM sleep. We maybe have 4 cycles of 10 minutes of 10, 15 minutes of REM sleep a night. And that is where our active, vivid dreaming, everything else happens. The rest of the time we're almost in a state of catatonia where we're knocked out by our physical body so that we don't get up and sleepwalk, things like that. So yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the drum beat thing because I'm thinking of other, ancient cultures that used
Mm.
frequencies to enter into expanded states of awareness. Um, which ones are you familiar with?
The one that always immediately comes to mind to me is Malta. There is an underground complex at Malta that specifically resonates in the theta range. So when you start chanting, just putting regular sound into the room, it is arranged in such a way that it resonates in the theta range. So when you're talking about, and this was a chamber that was used for initiation ceremonies, religious rites, things like that. So the idea that an initiate, who may not be used to that theta range,
Hmm.
experiencing that theta range for the first time, um, yeah, your brain will literally start creating patterns in front of your eyes. It's remarkable, what especially what intense frequency can do, because your eyes are basically water with some chromatophores in it. So when they get compressed in the right way, I mean, if you push your eye just a little and itch it, you'll start seeing color speckles. You're activating the chromatophores in your eyes when you do that. Um, the same thing can happen with the proper frequency resonating the water inside of your eyeball. And you will start having hallucinations. You will start having a psychedelic trip eventually. It is really remarkable. So yeah, our brain is elastic and ready to do these things, more than willing to do them. One of my favorite things in the world was Gansfeld goggles, which was basically putting on a set of earmuffs that blocked out sound, and
Yeah.
then you put on this pair of blue goggles and just stared, and eventually your brain would start seeing geometric shapes move and things like that. It is starved for data and looking for a pattern to lock in on. So when it can't find one, it just creates one. Uh, Amazing stuff.
I'm thinking of the times I have been in cathedrals where there
Mm,
would be a choir, say, doing a Gregorian chant and how it
yeah,
reverberated off the cathedral walls
absolutely,
and being
absolutely.
transported, it's
Well,
all
and
over.
and those spaces were specifically constructed to carry sound. There was a fantastic study that was just actively done on Stonehenge that showed the fact that it was designed to amplify sound from certain directions. So if if people were in the middle and different actors were standing at different stanchions, different blocks at Stonehenge and chanting and saying things, you would hear it sound like multiple voices coming from around you. Um, one of the biggest moments in my life was getting to actively go to Delphi, and seeing spaces like that, seeing the Oracle, but also seeing the amphitheater, and standing at the top with my history professor at the bottom, lighting a match, and it sounded like that wooden match was being lit right next to me. That is how well the sound carried with zero amplification. It was all simple geometry and placement, and the way in which it was constructed. So our ancient ancestors had a deep connection with the earth. They had a connection with things. Their connection with it was survival. I talk about this on my show regularly. You want to know why they were so tied into the stars? Because that's when they found out how to when to plant, when to pull up plants, when to change locations for hunting. Like you lived and died by the earth and by the cycles of the earth and by understanding it and by understanding your connection to it. So there are numerous places like Delphi and Malta that were built specifically for the use of sonics.
So clearly,
Remarkable.
you've had some paranormal experiences as a result of listening to binaural beats and entering into these expanded states of awareness. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about, you know, how you got into that and what's happened to you.
The binaural beat study once again really started with my love of subliminal psychology and the ideas of subliminal psychology, and really I started researching frequencies that just different frequency ranges that have affected the mind in different ways. um there are frequency ranges that make you feel like there is another presence in the room, all kinds of wild things. And uh, I first started incorporating this into my avant-garde music, where I was doing interpretive pieces of Book of Revelations, different really high concepts. But I would bury these frequencies in the background so that you couldn't hear them. Um, and always got my giddy thrill when somebody was like, I don't know why, but that piece of music really creeped me out, man. Like it was very unsettling. And it was like, ooh, notes taken. Okay. That one worked. Um, and I wouldn't call it nefarious, but I was always very influenced by movies like The Exorcist, that used a lot of subliminal psychology in their soundtracking. All the sounds coming out of the young girl who is possessed are the sounds of like pigs and sheep being slaughtered, played in reverse, tied with like the sounds of bees and wasps backwards, shook up in jars, just things to feed off of our primal fears. That played in reverse, we don't know what they are, but our brain is able to decode that and just go, wow, that's horrifying. Um, so strange that my work started there and ended up in the world of, well, let me help people. Like I started realizing that, um and it was probably about 5 or 6 years into my journey of frequencies and using frequencies in that way that I started finding things like binaural beats in the work of the Monroe Institute. And my little Voyager XL, which was one of the little binaural beat machines that you could buy, where it was like had a 15-minute long tape about stop smoking, things like that, where you could program yourself in different ways and self hypnotize to help better and strengthen your brain. There were programs to listen to while you were studying to increase alpha waves and increase memory retention. Really interesting work that has been done in that field since the 60s. They've been doing it, and the idea of hemisync and the idea of our brains being ready to follow that pendulum pattern, just looking for a step to fall in with that it likes. And it's funny because there are a range of people out there, Scott, that um I've had it described to me where it's almost like having a wet willy in your brain. Um there their brain reacts in a different way to the binaural beat. Instead of producing the frequency, the wobble just drives them crazy, and they're like, "Yeah, I can't do this." Um, but it's a small range of people that that adverse effect happens with, and even that in and of itself is interesting to see that there is a range of people that this just it 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 woogs out their brain and makes them feel uncomfortable.
So the different frequencies you mentioned said that they were good for different things.
Mm.
Give us some examples of how you found that out and what's been really beneficial for you or other folks.
Well, there were a couple of studies that were actively done on Schumann resonance. Schumann resonance is a fantastic one, just for even pure tone therapy. You can buy like little Schumann resonance generators. Schumann resonance, once again, our range of human hearing is typically 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, and Schumann resonance is about 8. So it's more of a vibration that you would feel than you would hear. It would be a low click or rumble. And yeah, it's that is one that quite a few studies were done, like in burn wards, things like that, showing the fact that putting this subliminally in the background helped healing quotients, help people heal faster. There are numerous studies that show binaural beat being used for PTSD work, being able to help, especially helping calm like ADHD minds, things like that. People who like myself just spin like a top, um, always going on something. I ordered parts for something while I was laying in bed at midnight because my brain started going, So things like that it is extraordinarily helpful for um stress, especially sleep, if insomnia, things like that. Being able to use binaural beats is a huge help for things like that. Many studies have shown. So there's some good work that has come out in the last all of 4 or 5 years showing the benefits of proper good use of binaural beats.
And when you use binaural beats, do you mix them with music?
Yes, I typically do. There are some things that I have done where it's just the straight binaural beat. Typically, though, whenever I'm creating what I would consider to be an album, that I'm putting out, it would normally be meditative music with that buried underneath. Typically, what'll happen is as the music starts, you'll hear the beat, and I'll typically tie that with the pure tone as well, just to help reinforce, because once again, some brains respond better to pure tone than to binaural beat. So I use a combination of the two. And you'll hear that kind of there as a tuning mechanism for your brain to go, oh, okay. And then the music takes over and you no longer hear the tone, or the beat. And uh yeah, but I've also got quite a few out there now that are just pure tone and pure binaural beat in and of themselves, no music over them, because there are quite a few people who like to use that just to go to sleep, things like that. I use quite a bit of binaural beat music, um, even in my bedroom. I've got a stereo system that's constantly playing binaural beat music. So
Yep. I'll vouch for that because that's really good for sleep. And
yeah,
if you're in that kind of time in life where things are active and busy,
yeah.
let's do a commercial.
Well,
it's really effective in it, and it helps reinforce our natural sleep cycle.
it absolutely is, and right now, especially, Scott, just in the last decade, um, people are always amazed, I guess, because I'm an audio video freak, that I don't have a television in my bedroom. I haven't had a television in my bedroom in almost 20 years. I refuse to. That is a distraction to what I'm there to sleep.
Oh, they
you
call
know?
that. I spent a lot of time studying sleep and binaural beats, and that falls into the range of sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
you train your brain that when I'm here on this bed,
that's
this
right.
is what we do. We go to
Well,
sleep.
and it's interesting, this is a really horrible analogy, but I think it rings true to, once again, the patterns in which our brain lives, and uh the way our body responds, when you look at a heroin addict, um it does not take the needle for them to start getting high. The process of preparation begins the release of dopamine. And that's something very important to consider when, I mean, even just the fact of what we're talking about right now, the sleep hygiene, the fact of getting your body into a regimen of, when I walk through this door, this is my focus. You know, this studio I'm in, unless I'm editing or working on a website or doing music, I am not in here. That is what this space is for. If I want to go relax, I'll go somewhere else, you know? But this space is specifically for creation and bringing things about in the world. That's my dedicated use for it. So yeah, it is very much as I walk down the hall, I'm changing gears to that. As I leave the hallway from this, I'm changing gears back into the real world, and getting out of that mode. So we have gotten to a point of overstimulation in our society that we have forgotten how to change gears, Scott. We've forgotten how important it is to change gears. And it's funny because it's not human society all over the earth. It's mainly here in the West. If you go to Europe, like they still have, like, month off, get out of here, go with your family, go do stuff. Man, you tell a boss you want a month off because you just had a baby, like, that says something about our society and what we value and how we value it. And that is a pattern that we are reticently putting into our brain on the daily. Um,
Well, this idea of entrainment, that we
yeah,
remember what it's like to be in an expanded state or in that creative state. So I
yeah.
think what you're telling me is that you may not need the binaural beats. You just remember what it feels like to be
What
creative.
once you've gotten to a certain point, yeah, like the binaural beats, I akin binaural beats to weight training at the gym. You could use it to bulk up, you could use it to tone up, or you could use it just for general joint work to make sure your body ain't creaking and hurting. There's numerous different ways you can use it. But it's good for you to get to the gym, Scott. Even if it's going out and taking a walk, it's good for you to get to the gym. you know and we forget that this thing right here inside of our head is what runs it all. It's no different than if you've got a computer and you don't delete things. Eventually that computer is going to get unstable. You've got to maintain the computer. You can't just keep throwing things into oblivion. And we have to maintain our brain. We have to take a day off to go fishing and think about nothing. Like, these things are important. And just the idea of giving ourselves a proper good night's rest. Even the fact that we've almost got to program ourselves to get a good night's rest is crazy. It's crazy. Um, but it's amazing that we can do it. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It doesn't take anything more than throwing on a pair of headphones and listening to some music.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable, and some of the experiences that are there are very akin to your work with NDEs and near death experience, very akin to um, astral projection, astral travel, even remote viewing. I know quite a few remote viewers that use binaural beats before they get into session. As a matter of fact, this last year, IRVA, the Sci-Fest, was co-sponsored by the Monroe Institute. And there was a whole session on using binaural beats before sessions with remote viewing, just to get your brain into that focused area, you know? Because yeah, it's very much uh, a mental workout.
So tell us an experience or two that you've had using binaural beats to kind of give our folks a flavor of what's possible?
I used binaural beats, and specifically binaural beats with the light machines and things like that for what was very akin to astral travel for a long time. One of the things that I used it for was uh, I guess almost like remote viewing, but more like programmed dreaming, where as I went to sleep using binaural beats that were used for uh, theta, things like that, used for deep REM sleep, used for astral projection, that kind of thing, that are tied with um, those types of experiences. Uh, I, I used it to basically program myself to go to sleep searching for answers to questions. Um, so not necessarily remote viewing, but more like, okay, I've got this problem with a wiring thing that I need to solve. Let's go to sleep with that intention. So it was intented sleep looking for an answer. And it was really interesting dream work for a long time. And got me to the point of just about astral travel. There were quite a few times where I had that jolt awake moment that people talk about. That if you can get past that, feel that sensation of falling awake, where it's like you're jerked back into your body.
Yep.
That if you can get past that, that's when astral travel begins. And when your connection with that really begins to happen. So, um, yeah, it's been pretty fun going through and specifically crafting music for such purposes. Talking with people who did remote viewing, people who did astral travel, things like that, and um, exactly what states they needed to get into in order to do that. And even right now, my new album that I'm working on, I have one album that I put out that was music for targeted individuals, people who are targeted by microwave and other technology, basically Havana syndrome, um, things like that, to help quell some of the trauma that they deal with, as well as some of the feelings of anxiety that keep them from sleeping, stuff like that. And that led me down the path of creating an album specifically for near death experiencers, one for UFO UAP experiencers, um, to once again help people deal with this point of ontologic shock that happens when you have one of these experiences. Like your whole world and everything that you know to be completely changes. And like our pre-show conversation, where we were talking about, um it's almost like a watch that comes in proximity of a magnet. um that watch forever has the frequency of the magnet with it. People who come back from NDEs, people who come back from um large paranormal experiences, being aboard craft, everything else. Not only is their life and their philosophy changed, but it seems like they are magnetically attracted to other paranormal phenomena, as though their frequency entirely has been shifted, and now they are partially in the frequency of those things that are happening. It's truly remarkable. The more I have studied that and talked with experiencers and interviewed more and more people, and it's really convinced me that this is somewhere that my musical work with binaural beats needs to go, is helping these people. Because there's like I was saying before the show, what about those poor folks who did not experience the tunnel of light that's on the shelf behind you? That they went and it was void. There was nothing, or there was feelings of fear and dread. um it doesn't change their afterlife experience or the fact that they had one, but it definitely changes the way that you process reality when you come back you know um
Amen. Yes, it does. So Speaking of which, talk to us about the curious realm and what that is and what you're doing with it.
I started the Curious Realm many, many years ago under a totally different title. The idea was that America was founded in a bar by a bunch of people with totally different walks of life, totally different philosophies, religious backgrounds, but they all agreed that whatever that thing is, we don't want it. Um, and they opened a conversation and they listened to each other. And it seems like our society now, Scott, doesn't want to have hard conversation and listen to both sides of a conversation empathetically. It's more like people are trying to convince people of a paradigm that they believe, and their want of confirmation is buried inside of that. So Curious Realm is very much a lot of the conversations that people are uncomfortable having and don't want to have when it comes to paranormal, when it comes to even parapolitical, things like disclosure movements, even the idea of uh, programs like MK Ultra, and the idea that yes, our government did experiment on the American public, and for some reason, there's still not a law that prevents them from doing so. Really strange, but yeah, there's zero law on the books to keep them from doing that again, fully and illegally, you know? So yeah, shedding light on a lot of topics like that. And talking with researchers, folks like yourself, like I said earlier, you've been on the show, talking about near-death experience and talking about the world of binaural beats, talking about your work at the Monroe Institute. Uh, it's basically exposing people to topics that they may not be familiar with. And if they are familiar with it, possibly an angle on the thought form that they haven't thought about. My job is to be a healthy, proper, capital S skeptic, which means that I do have my beliefs. I've had my paranormal experiences. The job of a skeptic is to take in new points of datum into a data set and be ready to have their mind changed, you know.
Got it.
But also be willing to call a spade when you've pulled a spade out of the deck, and go, nope, sorry, I'd love to say that's a heart, it's not, you know. And that's a hard truth that sometimes people don't want to deal with because of want of confirmation. uh but there's a conversation there that needs to be had about the want of confirmation, and also about the cognitive dissonance that's going hand in hand with that down the road. It's interesting to see how so many of these topics, be it even near death, how those things are talked about on the morning news now. People, it used to be you wouldn't see, maybe on a Phil Donahue episode, you may have seen a couple of authors or something, but you wouldn't have seen it like, on the ABC morning news. Here's this young man who had an afterlife experience and has written a book about it. You wouldn't have seen that in the news on morning
I
shows.
wouldn't.
You wouldn't have seen, even now, the idea of a UFO denier by the media being used instead of UFO believer. To,
Interesting.
to
So,
see
how do
to see that switch of like, oh, crazy Uncle Dave who believes in UFOs, to, well, Uncle Dave who's a UFO denier. Um,
love that?
so
So, Chris, how do people find the curious realm if they want to have their minds opened?
the easiest way is curiousrealm.com. You can always go to our website. You can find all of our episodes there. You can find us on just about every distribution platform for audio and video out there. We actively just joined the Aftermath Media Network with Ground Zero and Clyde Lewis. So you will soon be able to find our shows there. We also have our own Roku app. So if you're a Roku user or have a Roku device, Roku television, just search Curious Realm in your apps, and you can download the app, get all of the new episodes, as well as binaural beat music. There's a whole section there of my meditation music, everything else. And you can find all the meditation music at artofchristopherjordan.com. There's my video series, my chakra meditation video series for sale on there, all kinds of things. So yeah, I am publicly available just about everywhere the internet reaches.
I get that. So, wrapping this up, Chris, what what would you like to leave our audience with? That one key nugget that they'll take with them and remember.
Despite what anybody tells you, your brain is elastic. It is ready to change on a dime. It is ready to grow on a dime, and it is up to you to make that happen, whether it's reading, researching, using binaural beats, what have you. Your mind is there, ready to be opened, waiting to be opened. Give it the opportunity, give it the chance, and you'll be amazed at where it takes you.
I love that. Thank you, Chris. We're so glad that you are here on the Afterlife Files. And thank you everybody for watching, and stay tuned. I've got a really interesting thought that I think you'll like. Bye,
Thank
Chris.
you. Take care.
There's one point that I'd like to highlight from this interview, and that is how each of us have agency when we are exploring expanded states of awareness. We enter and hold these expanded states in order to achieve those experiences that are not normally available to us. And with the use of intention, we can achieve these remarkable states of being, desire, and our ability to focus our intent. That makes all the difference in the world. I think you did a nice job of alluding to that, but I really wanted us to understand that this idea that we are in control. It's not, universal forces just popping in on us. We are the ones that can drive the ship. We're the ones that can set the agenda. Thank you for joining us here at the Afterlife Files. See you next time. Bye bye.